Kevin Wilbur.
That's Kevin Wilbur, yeah.
All right, ladies and gents, you're all set to start your meeting.
Okay, we are here tonight for the Town of West Warwick Arctic Village Redevelopment Agency Zoom meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. The time is 5:08 p.m. Like to have a roll call, please, Mark?
Okay, Mr. Marsh,
Here.
Mr. Tabak,
Here.
Mr. Lancelotto.
Here.
Mr. Boyer emailed earlier, said he couldn't make it. And is Mr. Patnode on yet? Mr. Patnode said he'd be arriving a little bit late to the Zoom meeting, but he will be on. You do have a quorum, Mr. Chairman. You have 3 members present of 5.
Very good. Okay, Mr. Brennan. All right, so item 1 for action tonight was a review. Hopefully everybody was able to look at them. Review and approval of the minutes from August 24th of 2020. So if we did have somebody review and somebody would like to make a motion, or are there any revisions?
I'll make a motion to accept the minute.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. Jack Lancelotto.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Would be
Aye.
myself. Aye. Yeah. We all set?
Yep, that's approved.
Okay, very good. All right. So I know we have, we have a discussion for 95 Washington Street, assessors plat 6, lot 476 and 472. And I know Mr. Wilbur's attorney contacted us today to postpone that, but then I see that he is on, Mark. So what is the status of that? Can you advise?
Yeah, so they did ask for postponement. I did understand through speaking with Mr. Wilbur's attorney that if Mr. Wilbur can hear me, I'm not sure or not, that, he may want to just speak generally about what's going on or his reason for withdrawal. So I think we should turn it over to see if he had anything he had to say, or if you guys had any questions for him in the interim. But we will not be discussing this item in detail, as he did ask to have it postponed.
And his counsel is not here tonight, Kurt, so.
He doesn't appear to be.
Right.
Mark, I've got Vincent Indeglia, I guess the name would be, with a hand up. Is that
Okay. Yeah, you could, Jim, if you want to recognize him, he also represents Mr. Wilbur, I guess.
Okay.
He's
So
got many attorneys.
is on as well, and that he would be representing Coastal KJB Builders. So anytime you would like. Mr. Magnet.
all right? Vincent, you can turn your
Hi,
camera on and unmute. There you go.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that we are on, but we're just observing tonight. We know that there's adjacent property or near adjacent property, and we're just looking to see how the board's working for tonight. But we did withdraw because we wanted to present something a little more detail. Mark bent over backwards to try to get us on the calendar. And then, of course, we should have heeded his advice and waited until we had just a little bit more, but we think we'll have something very good for you guys, and you'll be happy with it. I know you've seen other of the projects, and I know when I appeared before a couple of years ago with Sandy, you listened to us, and we would expect the same thing again. Hopefully we can present something that works for you again too. That's it. So he doesn't have anything to really say. I just didn't want you to be in the dark as to why we were sitting here watching.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. Obviously, there will be no discussion because we don't have any idea, really why you were coming or what we're going to do. So we look forward, hopefully, to having you come, and we'll, make sure we can accommodate you with a meeting when you need one. So
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
This is Council Joe Brennan. I just want a clarification. I heard Mark use the word postponement and the representative used the word withdrawal. I
Okay.
just want a clarification. Is it a continuance or withdrawal? And then either way, I think the board should make a motion and vote on the approving the withdrawal or the continuance.
Yeah, Mark, if that's okay, if we could put it as a continuance to the next available meeting. And that way we can supplement for that time.
Just
I
as a
make a
matter of
motion to-
matter of clarification, so that, I know we have two attorneys on here. This was a matter of for discussion and not a matter for approval or consideration. So I don't have an issue with continuing it to the next available agenda because no notice is required and that there will not be a formal action taken on it. Just under that understanding, I would think that a continuance would be appropriate.
I would agree with what Mark said if it's only on for discussion.
Okay, all right, so at this time, I'd like to have a motion for continuance of the Coastal KJB Builders presentation for tonight.
I'll make a motion for continuance.
Have a second, please?
Dan.
Second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, motion's made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very
Motion
good.
carries.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great night.
All right, thank you. All right, so the next item, number 2 up for discussion tonight is 1190 Main Street, Assessors Plat 16, lot number 121, and I had brought this to Mark's attention over the winter. This is the old post office adjacent to the town hall, and I had mentioned to Mark about maybe bringing something up on this and moving on this property. It's been sitting in a state of disrepair since the post office relocated, probably had to be 15 years ago at least, maybe 20. Building is in a state of disrepair. Looks like it's becoming dangerous. It's exposed. So I'm going to turn over to Mark just to let him discuss what we talked about and what our options would be on the table for future action on this building.
I just want to acknowledge that Mr. Pat Note has joined the meeting at 5:14.
My apologies for the late arrival.
No problem. So just briefly to touch on Main Street, 1190 Main Street, and that would be the post office building. Jim and I had many conversations about that building, and over the last few years, it appears to have changed hands several times for various reasons, primarily either foreclosures or tax sales. And as you'll recall, the agency some years ago was dealing with the prior owner, and that owner had presented a tax stabilization agreement for the project, for that property. That agreement was passed from the redevelopment agency, the council. The council tentatively approved that agreement with certain terms and conditions, including presenting a clear title, paying back taxes. And there was also a time limit, I believe, on the performance period. Well, the developer at the time was unable to perform. He did not meet any of the criteria that the council had attached to the agreement. So that agreement has basically expired, or not only has it not expired, it never really came to fruition because it was a conditional approval, and the applicant actually never met the conditions, so it just failed. So at this point, the property is existing as just a vacant property, and most recently, there appeared to be a change in the signage on the property. Mr. Marsh had reached out to me. We had a conversation on the property. And at that point, I decided to check the tax assessor's records. And when I did it, I saw that a corporation, I think it was called Raganar Corporation or something like that, owned the building. And what I did was, when I saw that, I went to the Secretary of State website and I searched that corporation, and I found that it was located in Florida, and that Redevelopment Development Group was an entity or the president of that corporation. So I believe that, while it's a local corporation, the owners are in Florida, and the owner, Lacessi, is known in West Warwick for the 175 Greenbush Road condo project. I think they own that property too. And they do have some, and I don't know what the relationship is, or even if there is a relationship at this point, but they did have a certain relationship with the prior owner of the property, which was, I forget the name of the company. Was it Center Realty, or I don't recall the name of the company, but it was Mr. Cambio was the president of that company. So it's been through many hands, receivership and tax sales. So we don't know the current condition of the property, but we do know that there is a current owner of the property. I have not heard or seen any activity over at that property. At this point, it's just sitting there as a vacant property.
Is there any, Mark, is
Yeah.
there back taxes on the property?
I did not check the taxes, but I will check that, but I'm not aware of there being back taxes currently on the property. I think the town is getting ready for a tax sale, and I don't believe I saw it on the tax sale list. But I will check that, get back
It
to
has
the
to be
member.
transferred, Mark, with the taxes that should have been.
They
cleared
should have
up.
been,
Yeah.
taxes should have been reconciled at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, we had talked about that today. We figured it probably was at some point.
May I ask a general question
Go right
Yeah.
ahead.
as someone who, well, the question is, so what's the menu of options or other options for a community and particularly West Warwick in a situation like this? If we feel a piece of property is lagging too long, I know the economy plays into that, but are there options?
Well, that's what Mark and I had talked about, and Mark will explain further. I brought up something to the similar. There was a property over here on East Greenwich Avenue, and also I think the Holmes building, the process we
Yeah,
started with
so-
that, correct, Mark?
Yeah, so there is a property where there is a process where if a property is derelict property, the town can declare it a derelict property. And through a process, they can put the property into receivership. That is actually what happened with the 69 Washington Street property that just got redeveloped by Mr. Wilbur. And you're right, Jim, there was a property on East Greenwich Avenue. Same thing happens with that property. So it would take a combination of the redevelopment agency, administration of the town, and the town council to basically make certain declarations under state statutes and establish a receiver, usually an attorney, and it has to go to, I think it has to go to municipal court. Joe Brennan might be able to help me with this if he understands that process. And then the municipal court would award it to the receiver, put it into receivership, and then that receiver would contact the owner and require them to come up with a development plan or a redevelopment plan within a certain amount of time. And the threat of not performing under the receivership is to have the property taken from you. So that usually gets the property owners actively involved and start working on the property.
As it did when you, for the other property you mentioned. So then what stipulations can a community put on for the potential redevelopment, especially if a property is significant and historic as the post office, or are there any?
Well, I think that I don't know exactly to what extent they can. This is a historic property. I believe the council probably, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure, Bill. I have never been through that process myself. But I think that they can be forced to do anything that is compliant, obviously, with existing zoning. In a property like this, they may be able to require them to perform due diligence with regard to preserving the property. But if ultimately it is cost prohibitive, I don't think you can force someone to do something with their property at a loss, right? You can try, but I think that would end up not being sustained by a court. So it would have to be, it certainly would be something that would comply with local zoning, and you could attempt to impose certain restrictions on the property, but those restrictions cannot be cost prohibitive to redeveloping the property. If that
Keeping
makes
in,
sense.
yeah, no, it does. I mean, it's the combination of the private sector and the public
So
sector.
for example, and I, I don't want to dwell on the on the Washington Street property, but, you know, that was a historic property too. And there were issues with preserving and redeveloping it. So, you know, when it came to the redevelopment agency, the agency was certainly willing to work with the developer to say, okay, well, there are some character, character related to this property you want to preserve, the sign, and that we, you know, you wanted certain things like it to be located on the street in a brick front and things like that, that were able to be incorporated into a development that at the end of the day was going to be economically feasible for the developer. But I don't think at that point you could have forced the person to rehab the existing building if it was going to be have to done at a loss. He would always have the opportunity to knock the building down. So that's the kind of the situation. You can try to, like in this particular instance, this is even in our redevelopment plan, this has been determined to be a historically significant building and one worth preserving. I don't know the condition of the building. That stipulation could be placed on it, but I think if an applicant or owner came back and they had, you know, engineering reports and things like that that said it is not economically feasible, I don't think you could force them to comply. I think you would have to. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, the longer we wait, the more the condition deteriorates.
Exactly.
So that's where I wonder if there's a, you know, as part of the private public, if there's a third sector where there's an opportunity to work with a potential developer for grants, et cetera, historic preservation grants, et cetera, to kind of to maintain it. It's iconic to West Warwick.
They're obviously on this property. Yeah, I don't know the status of historic preservation grants currently, Bill, or even historic preservation tax credits. I mean, that is a whole field, and there are specific and particular developers that work in that field, and they specialize in that. So they know the field and they know where to go and they know how to do those things. I'm actually working on the Hope Mill in Situate, and that was one of those historic tax credit properties. Okay. But at the end of the day, I think, again, what we could do if the agency chose to is to make an overture to the current owner, maybe put together a letter saying, we understand that you have now acquired this property. We would like to see some activity. Our interest is in preserving the property. Would you be interested in, coming before the agency, making a presentation, or even coming up with some sort of a development plan? We could make an overture to the new owner of the property formally with a letter. That's an option, obviously.
I think that is really what we need to do at this point. I mean, this just kind of popped up on us. We've been talking about this all winter. And then we talked today, and this kind of whole thing dropped on us. So, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe the timing's good. Maybe the economy is going to help it out. And I think we probably should draft something up and send it out to the new owner and see what kind of feedback we get. And I think we're going to be in a conundrum with this one. I think because it is historic, but the fact that somebody did purchase it and then transferred ownership, whatever that may mean, means hopefully that somebody has plans to do something with it. And I don't think that somebody's going to hopefully purchase it and pay all the back taxes off and then just sit on it for however many years again. But I do think it's becoming an issue. It's open to the weather at this point. And, it is a landmark in Arctic. And I think, we're here to kind of better Arctic. And I think we need to move on it and make some and reach out. I think so, Mark, if you could do that for us, that would be great.
Yeah. So what I would suggest then that we do is we accept a motion for the agency that they would like us to develop a letter to reach out to the owner to determine if there's any activity or interest moving forward with a redevelopment of that property. And our interest would be in preserving, obviously the exterior. I'm not sure what's on the interior. I know there was some historically significant artwork I thought that I heard about on the interior. I've never been in that building.
I have.
But, the exterior is primary importance. The interior, I think, would be of secondary importance, but if there are items of interest or of historical significance on the interior, I'm not sure. You'd have to let me know, or we might be interested in that, but I think just an overture to the owner. So if you'd like to make a motion and then, authorize us to send out the letter under the signature of the chairman on behalf of the agency, I think that would be appropriate.
I have a question. When did the new owners take ownership?
It was within the last 6 months. I don't have the date in front of me, Stan, but it was fairly recent.
All right, so it's a relatively short period of time. So
Yeah.
I was thinking about being a little bit stronger, but since they just took ownership, and who knows what they're thinking right now. But do we have any safety issues in that building right now?
You'd have to check with the building official, but I think it's fairly secure. I know there was some issues with the front doors, but I think they resolved those.
Okay. I also was told, I don't know if it's true or not, that freaking we had trees growing in the building.
I believe it. I had been in there back when we started this whole thing, and I believe it.
Yeah, because I think it's leaking in somewhere. I don't know, but I
Yeah,
think water's getting in the
The
building.
roof was open to the weather when I was in the building,
So basically, we just have the shell.
pretty
Sounds
much.
like.
Well, look what they did with the Masonic Temple in Providence with just 2 walls.
Yeah, that's
I would,
true. And there needs. I mean, at a minimum, I think in that letter we need to make something along. They have to maintain the property around there. Cut the grass, keep the maintain it in some level, and.
This is Joe Brennan, and if in putting any kind of maintenance things in that letter, I would just be a little leery of, because I don't think the redevelopment agency has the authority to. I think it might come better from the building official and the municipal court when it comes to maintenance and open weather issues and things that we're talking about. I think it's just a fine line, because if you were to try to violate someone for maintenance, it's not like they can come before you and you can fine them for it. It's really always just a request. And it just sounds like we're trying to keep things friendly. So that might be more adversarial.
Yeah, I agree. I just think we should have a motion. Like Mark said, let's have somebody put a motion on the table just to reach out, send them a letter. We're here. We can help you. And we'll kind of go from there and see what kind of feedback we get. And then if we
Well,
don't, we'll go to plan B.
I completely agree. I'm just wondering if there's a fine line, and you, Jim and Mark, know much more about the reality of development than I do. So I would defer it to you. And I want to thank Jim for bringing this up and bringing this before us, and Mark for your advice. So with that, I'll make a motion that we reach out to the new owner. To the extent at which concerns are stated, I'll leave up to Mark and to the chair. And hopefully they can get back to us relatively soon.
I'll second the motion.
The motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Motion carries. So Mark will look forward to that. And when you're ready, I will sign it if you need be. So that item is closed. And the last thing on the agenda left tonight is just any public comment. So do we have anybody out in YouTube land or wherever that would like to make any comments? Guess not. Nobody put
Yes,
their hand up?
Vincent has his hand back.
Somebody up? Okay. Somebody has their hand up, you said?
Yep.
Okay, could you state your name for the record, please?
Yeah, it's Vincent and Dahlia, and I
Oh,
just.
sorry, I thought it was another Vincent, sorry. Okay.
No, I just wanted, in light of the earlier conversation you had regarding that receivership process for 69 Washington, I was intricately involved in that process. And I'm sure if you speak with your solicitor, the city itself has standing to exercise the rights under a particular statute, but the statute is designed for abandoned or what is defined as public nuisance properties. The way you were describing this building or its potential, it probably would fall into those definitions. However, it's also designed so that there has to already have been a residential component to the property you're looking at. And the reason the legislature did that was because it was concerned about the public health and safety of people living in abandoned or public nuisance homes. And it also, therefore, your housing courts were therefore allowed to have jurisdiction to appoint receivers. So that's the process. You have something that has so the Holmes building had a residential component to it, right? And so they were able to, the solicitor was able to bring an action to the housing court and say, please put this in receivership. The receiver's obligation is to ensure that the property, the abandonment and public nuisance are abated. And the courts have typically interpreted that abatement to mean that it is livable again and doesn't pose a danger. Not just that, well, if the violation on the property was that the sign was down or the siding was down, well, a lot of times you guys can't get into the homes, just as like you were discussing today, because you don't go into people's homes. But once the receiver's appointed, you know, if there's no electricity and you know, it's a disaster, then the receiver's job is really to make it really livable again. And he either works with the owner or he doesn't. But that's kind of how that works. I only tell you that because I've probably rehabilitated 72 houses in Providence and Warwick through that process as a receiver. So John Dorsey was the receiver in my particular case. I represented the property owner. But I just didn't want you guys to go off and spend a lot of time. I think you had a lot of other remedies other than the receivership. And I don't even know the property that well. But if it's only if it's the post office building, I think that's only commercial and doesn't have a residential component to it. That's my public comment of the day, and I'm sticking with it, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
That was
for
very
your-
helpful. Thank you.
That's okay. And Mr. Brennan is on, and he is our, counsel, so we can chat with some other things with him, when the time comes. So, all right. Is there anybody else on for comment? I don't think I see anybody, but I'm not sure if we have access to that.
We do.
No. We good?
No, Mr. Wilbur is still here with us too, but he hasn't put his hand up to comment. So I think you're in good shape, Jim.
All right. Very good. I appreciate that. So at this time, I guess, Mark, we're all set, right? I'll close.
So 5:35.
5:35, and I'll motion to close, please.
So moved.
I'm second the motion.
Okay, motion seconded. So officially the meeting is closed, and I thank you for everybody's attendance tonight, and hopefully we see everybody shortly for some other actions. All right.
Soon.
Good night.
Thanks all.